Hello and welcome to my brief introduction to Live2d. This is just a very quick overview of my own experiences with the program and how I personally make my models. My name is Marky Joy, and this is my model, Lorelei. I actually made Lorelei for animations like this.
Say I'm the best and bow to your princess number one. You should know I get my way all morning, noon, night and day. Okay.
Normally, when I make a face rigging model, they're a little less animated than Lorelei is. As you can see, Lorelei has some slightly extreme movements compared to most models, and her lips don't quite match up. This is why I will be making a second VTuber model and taking you through the whole process on how I make my models. I hope you enjoyed the video, and let's get to it! Now, starting out, I already had a couple of character designs. This really helped having a guideline. That way, my general shape and form sketches that I did at the beginning here on the computer were a lot quicker. Without the sketches and planning I did on paper, I would not have been nearly as fast as I was here. Another tool that is super helpful in speeding the process up is the mirror tool. I use the mirror tool mainly when drawing symmetrical characters. It's not really a cheat, even though it feels like it. It's just a way to expedite and help out when you want to make something quicker. Now, talking about the character design itself, Lorelei is a more pop star based, kind of fun, sweetsy, airheady almost type of character. I wanted somebody who was going to be a bit more contrasting to that. So this is Jade. She is a punk rock character, and I thought that that was a good way to kind of balance out the sweetsy character of Lorelei with a more sassy, punk rocky, hard-hitting, fun kind of character. Now, something you might notice right through this part is that I'm flipping through my layers back and forth a lot. Mainly for visibility's sake, but also because I like to keep everything separated on layers until the very last minute, so everything is editable and I can go back and fix things if I have to. And then once everything's done, I go through and combine everything and make sure it's all smooth and comprised. Another thing is that I tried a little bit of a texture with the skirt. I had just a little simple pixelated skirt texture. Originally, I wanted it to be kind of a plaid looking style, but unfortunately, I didn't think I could pull that off with the modeling program, as the mesh mechanism that the program uses would pull the pattern around too much, and I felt like it would be too much of a mess to mess with. something I found a little bit funny here. You can actually see my character look off to the side a bit consistently because I was using my character model as a reference for the eyes here. I've just recently learned a new style of painting the pupils, so I'm still kind of playing around with it and fiddling around trying to see what works. And I think I settled on something that is still unique. It really captures the character's spirit, so I hope it turned out well. Alright, so the model is done now. I went ahead and did some of the shading off screen and I fixed the bangs because they were a little weird and I wanted them to be a little nicer looking. Before I go ahead and put her into the animation program, I decided to give you guys a little look on how all of the layers are comprised. So the main thing is that obviously, like any other piece of artwork, you want the things that you want in front in front. But something that's a little bit more important for this one is that everything that you want to move needs to be on its own separate layer. So the skirt has to be one layer by itself, and if you want the ruffles to move a little bit differently than the skirt, then you're gonna have to have them on their own separate layer as well. That's why when you come up to the hair and the bangs, you can see that every little bang is on its own separate layer so that it'll have a much more natural and full movement. Now, you might have noticed that her eyes look a little weird. The reason why is because I have both of her eyelids on currently. That's because when you put the model into the program, everything that you want to be seen at some point should be visible. That way, you know it's all there and it's all functioning properly when you put it in. Now, the mouth is a pretty interesting part because it's separated onto different layers. Like, you can obviously not see the inside of the mouth here because it's hidden behind the lips. And lips work just like our real life lips, actually. They cover up your teeth and your tongue and keep everything hidden inside. So if we were to close off these lips, you'd see the teeth and the tongue and everything inside. So I believe she is done and we're ready to transfer her over into the animation program. Well, I'll see you there, I guess. Now here's where the work gets a little bit trickier and a lot more technical. Most of the meshes in the program can be made by using an automatic mesh maker, but for pieces like the eyebrows and the mouth, you're going to have to go ahead and make the meshes by hand. The reason being is because the mouth and the eyebrows and the eyelashes all move a lot more than the rest of the parts. The rest of the parts need to turn a little bit or maybe do a little wiggle. These pieces need to move much more fluidly because they're main expression parts. Now, if I was making a model for a video game character, I would have to be aware of how many polygons I was using. Since I'm just making a VTuber model, the amount of polygons doesn't really matter as it'll run smoothly either way. But the more polygons you have, the more shapes that the computer has to move and the slower the model has a possibility of running. So it's always good to kind of keep that in mind depending on what you're making the character for. Now we're finally starting to get into actual animating of the character. On the left-hand side, you will see a box called Parameters. The parameters are basically the whole function of the Live2d system. In the Parameters box, you have each a little slider which you can attribute different key forms. All you have to do is attribute the different shapes that you want to move to that parameter and then set key forms for them. So for the eye blinking, I have 3 key forms. the eye closed, the eye open, and the eye half closed. Now here is my first use of deformers on the model. Deformers are really awesome. They are a key feature to the Live2d program, and they allow you to move multiple pieces at once. They also allow you to change the shape of all of these different pieces at once. You can also use them for individual layers, like here on the eyebrows. They give the objects abilities to have multiple directions that they're moving all at the same time, and it gives the model this really awesome 3D effect. I haven't come across it in any other program yet, but I'm also new to the whole rigging thing. Now we're getting into one of the more tedious parts of the job. The mouth is one of the more intense and detailed pieces to work on. It has to have a specific way of moving in order for it to work right with the face rigging systems. I actually have a chart right here that will show you how I have to go through and rig up the mouth. The system is a lot more complicated, as you can see in the parameters, similar to how I did with the eyeballs. If you noticed earlier, there's an option to link two different parameters together. This gives a smoother up and down, so instead of you're just going left to right, you're going left, right, up, and down. So X and Y parameters, X and Y coordinates on a 2D plane. The mouth alone took me 1 hour, actually over an hour, just to do it. I think it would have been a little bit faster, but my computer was running slow due to me running both the animation program as well as my OBS recording program and my Live2d model with Lorelei. I probably would have been a little bit faster, but that's how it is. And here is how she looks so far. Her eyeballs move, her eyebrows move, her lips move, and she should blink too, but this animation cycle doesn't show that. She's quite expressive, isn't she? Now we're on to the second most tedious part of the work, but also the most exciting. The head X and Y parameters take a lot of work because you have to make sure that every piece you want to move is set up in its proper deformer. Now, instead of setting up and using the shape itself, you want to have everything paired into a deformer. That way, you can transform the eye without affecting any of the other shapes that you've done before. This is how I'm able to make the eye move side to side without affecting its blinking pattern. This is another reason why the deformers are so useful in this program, because without them, you'd have many clashing and conflicting parameter types. Similar to how I used a reflect tool in my drawing program, Live2d has a reflect tool for its motions. When you make a motion going to the left, you can actually go back in and set a reflection, asking the AI to make a reflection movement going right. You can only do this for individual parameters or individual objects that you have set up for that parameter. Another tool using the same feature is synthesize all corners. Now, whenever you have a parameter where it is the X and Y coordinates, you get 4 other coordinates. Before, you'd only have center, left, and right. Now you have center, left, and right for each option. So things like having the head look left and up at the same time can be very difficult to do on your own. That's why the program has a synthesize all corner button. Now, it's not perfect as it's generated by AI. You sometimes have to go in and finagle and detail where it lies and how it works. But other than that, it's extremely helpful and helps speed up the process quite a bit. Now here's another checkup on how she moves. With the head tilt, you can see a lot more life in her. It's quite exciting to see her come along. Now all that's left is the body. One of my favorite things to do in the models is to add a little bit of extra movement. So whenever the head tilts to the side from the neck, I added the hair moving towards the side as well. It just gives a little bit more life, and that's kind of what the whole point of this is for, is to animate life. From here, I simply made sure that we did everything we did with the head, with the chest and the skirt, making sure everything lined up properly and moved properly. Now we're moving on to the final touches. I'm just doing the Z parameter, which adds a little bit of tilt to the body. I'll move on to doing the legs and arms next, so that when she moves around, it kind of feels like she's actually standing there and not just a flat piece of paper. And now we are on to the final part of making our model. We are adding the physics. Right now I am using deformers to make the skirt kind of do a little bit of a swoosh. I will go on to making the hair next, and we'll rig them up in the physics panel on Live2d. Then we'll get to see how they look. This is probably my absolute favorite part of making the model, because seeing the swooshy skirt or the hair move when it follows my mouse is just great. It makes me so happy to see that. Oh, I did this! And now our model is just about finished. The last thing we have to do is add all of our textures to the texture atlas. Now the texture atlas is a giant puzzle piece image file that holds everything that we need for the model. This is everything that is going to show up in the program, and it will be in a legible format for the program to put every piece in the right place. Now we simply export as a Mach3 file, and we create a folder to hold all the different pieces so that we don't lose any pieces. And now our model is face rig ready. Now, really quick, before I put the model into the actual face rigging program, I wanted to add a couple little special expressions for the model to make. So I opened up the model in Live2d Viewer, and in here we are able to make some special little animations in the form of JSON files. So the only little animations that I've added are blush, angry eyes, and a little star animation. All right, and here we are in VTube Studio. This is my go-to program for face tracking, and I already have Jade loaded up. Now let's pull her in. And here she is. I'm actually very happy with how her movements are working. And I have a couple of extra buttons set up. So if I were to hit my one button on my keyboard, it adds a little bit of a blush look, making her seem a little bit bashful, like, oh, hello there, nice to see you. The other expression I have is angry eyes, and this one's my favorite, mainly because it's like, ha! Do you want to fight me? Huh? It brings me a lot of entertainment. And then finally, I had a little bit of an extra animation with some happy stars to go behind her. Just express, oh my gosh, that's so great. Now, when you start up the program, the model doesn't actually have these set up right away. Now over here you can see that I have my iPhone hooked up to my computer. There is also a face tracking software in the program itself, so if you have a webcam, it can work just on your computer. Personally, I use the iPhone because the iPhone's face tracking abilities are much more advanced than most web cameras, and it results in a much smoother and easier functioning model. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and edit something in my model, I would go into my model settings, and here is where all of the parameters that we made are hooked up. So you can see things like face angle, so up, down, left, right, all connected into one place. You can actually see the little red dot as I lean back and forth. Change in how it's moving in relation to the model. Now, one of the things that I had to add into the program is my breathing parameters because they don't automatically come set up with the model. All you have to do is choose input, and this tells you what your webcam will be doing or what button you will push to activate this thing. You can have voice volume if you have a microphone hooked up, or all these other options. You can see some of them are iOS only because, as I mentioned, iPhone web cameras are a lot better than just your regular computer web camera. The two that I ended up adding were breathing and the star twirl. And both of these have a automatic breathing set to them, so I don't have to worry about them moving. They don't actually need an input because they move on their own. And the star twirl is basically the movement of the stars. If I were to turn it off, the stars would stop moving. But with it on, it's a lot cuter. And in this specific program, there's a lot of other options. You can change the background to different things. Hello. And the other option we have is a few items. So thank you very much for joining me on this creation process. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you had some inspiration to possibly check out the programs or look into some new ventures. Have a lovely day.